Hi everybody, my name is Dorjee Sun. I'm the CEO co-founder of Perlin, and this is...
Hi, I'm Kenta, CTO of Perlin. Pretty much just that.
Yeah, and thanks so much for finding time to join us. Today is our Periscope AMA. We are sitting in Singapore. It's a Friday. It's 11 a.m., so it's 11 p.m. for East Coast people. Just a bit of background on me, and then we've already got a bunch of questions coming in, which Kenta will start bringing up. My background, I started my first software company at university. Since then, I've done nearly 20 startups. Also, I was in the environmental space for 10 years. So in 2007, started doing carbon credits and rainforest conservation. So particularly with what's happening in the Amazon right now, we're actually going to be using blockchain to solve for some of those problems, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But as a result of my environmental work, we made front page of Time Magazine, front page of Wall Street Journal. I was one of Time Magazine's Heroes of the Environment, and everything was really pretty amazing until the lack of government agreement resulted in the carbon markets not really playing out. And so about 2014, that was when I started getting interested in Bitcoin, and that's also when we eventually started investing around the $500 mark. Subsequent to that, we were involved in about 30 different initial coin offerings and initial exchange offerings, and also have done a bunch of angel investing and co-founded a hedge fund in the Bitcoin arbitrage space. So really, really deeply passionate about the decentralized economy and the benefits that it can bring. And also previously was COO of Santiment, Santoken, co-founded and was a director and an advisor to Republic, which is Ren. And you might wonder what's on the back screen. Later on we'll be telling you, but if you're interested, you can check out this link and just start clicking away. But that's an intro for me. Maybe give a bit of background, Kenta?
Yeah, definitely. So programming. I started programming since I was about 6 years old. Main reason why was I used to play a lot of those kind of online games when I was a child. I really had like a sort of a short temper / patience. So I wanted to, finish up those games quickly, and I got into hacking games. That sort of went on into me then playing multiplayer games, hacking those, learning how to create my own software. And then afterwards, I started my own little online shop selling virtual currency in exchange for real US dollars back then. That sort of went on from game hacking into me eventually developing into a sort of a gray hat hacker. He used to make a lot of malware, rats being remote admin tools, keyloggers, all those kind of things. And in making them and using them, I would be selling them off to a lot of other fellow hackers in a bunch of different underground forums. Just wanted to mention those underground forums because this was all the way back during 2009. What was really interesting is that from what I saw from my perspective when I was little, these underground forums really were the first ones to adopt Bitcoin from an early standpoint. Back then, hackers found it very tedious to be able to, give money to other hackers in exchange, buy licenses for all kinds of different software. They used to use Liberty Reserve, Western Union, PayPal, all those kind of services, but of course, as you know, they're highly centralized services. Some of them actually got shut down by the FBI. I think Liberty Reserve is down now. And then Bitcoin got into the space. Hackers all of a sudden started mining Bitcoin. They just decided to use it to facilitate all kinds of different underground deals. I was part of that movement. I had a whole bunch of Bitcoin back then. I unfortunately sold mine when it was around the 1.4K mark. That was like 2014-ish, sort of.
With some pumps.
Then afterwards, so this was before the huge speculation rising all the way up to 20K and stuff. Then afterwards, I eventually retired off of my hacker career. I went over to then doing some legitimate businesses, learn how to make web, mobile, desktop apps. I did a bunch of contract deals, worked as a freelancer. Just the very moment I turned 13, then went on to doing artificial intelligence, signal processing. I got a knack for it because I entered Google Science Fair, won that. and then proceeded onwards to working as the head of research for Naver eventually, and did a bunch of different hackathons, University of Pennsylvania, MIT, Google, etc. Yeah.
Awesome. Do we want to jump to some questions? And while Kenta's just looking at some of the questions that we're getting in, please feel free to tweet us or jump into Telegram, send questions. But yeah, how we met actually was we read one of Kenta's writings. He was doing blog posts on second layer scaling, and we were like, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. And at the time he was heading up a bunch of AI research at Naver in Korea. We got on a plane, we flew over there, and then convinced him to quit and take a dive into Perlin. And so that was now 18 months ago. So we're, who says people can't multitask? Look, I'm playing PERL Clicker and I'm answering the questions. So we're one of those projects where we're really focused on the long term. We have had a lot of people ask us, why are we IEOing? Why are we also raising so much money? But we have 6 years of runway. After the IEO, our treasury will give us a further 10 years of runway, and we've got a really solid team, 30 people, which we'll go into. But we're really focused on the long-term adoption, the marathon.
Actually, before we even start going into the questions, we should probably talk about what the heck is this game, what's actually being played here.
Very well.
I mean, on Wavelet, what you can do is you can build all kinds of different dApps. A lot of people are really interested in the sort of TPS we can provide, 31,240 transactions per second, 0 to 4 second finality. That's easily 300, 400 times faster than the sort of finality latency you'd get out of any other blockchains. What exactly does it unlock? What exactly can you do with all of that kind of scalability? A lot of people, a lot of game devs especially, reached out to us. They were really curious, can I start building much more real-time games with it? And because so many people have been asking us, we decided, why not? Why don't we just go about building our own games? Some of the devs in our core dev team, they used to be game programmers back then. I also used to work for a company called Nexon for the game MapleStory when I was a bit back then. So that kind of evolved into us heck, let's just do a little demo. And so, we've now got a full-fledged game for you guys to show. It's sort of a spin-off of a really popular game back in the day called Cookie Clicker. You can kind of guess what you do, you click. But
yeah, and also, to be frank, I'm not a huge gamer, so they had to do something that was intergenerational. So this game I get, and it's actually quite addictive and fun.
Oh.
And when you buy stuff, you can even buy some clever stuff like the Seafood Factory, which even talks about the insurmountable problems around the FDA and how it actually ties into real-world economy. So I thought it was kind of clever.
I think I was drinking a beer when I was writing that description.
There was definitely a lot of beer drinking happening. There's a Titanic. If you even get to the lost city of Atlantis, we're going to throw in a Perlin t-shirt. This is the black version. Wow. Now you might ask why the Perlin t-shirt has such a large pearl. Well, I'll let JJ answer that on social media. But yeah, so that's the black one. And we also have white. So if you want to know why our office actually has very little seating space, it's because someone also overordered 1,000 of them. So there's 1,000 of these, but very stylish. You'll note the size of the pearl. And so what we're going to do at the end of this question and answer, and we've only got 60 minutes, we don't want to drag out and take too much of your time. Kenta and I are going to have a 1 minute each click off to see who clicks the fastest. And the prize is a mini banana. Okay, moving on. Yes, Kenta. Questions?
I was going to make.
I've always been fascinated by these little plantains. The plantain.
Anyways, so let's go for you guys' questions. It looks like there's a whole bunch of them. I see a couple good ones. I'll start off with a little technical one. So,
of course.
Question 1 from Twitter, guy called Happy Any 8351767. He asked, "What is the difference between leaderless proof of stake and normal proof of stake, and why did you choose leaderless proof of stake?" So I'd like to give a little overview first, what exactly is up with proof of stake, what's leaderless proof of stake, what's not leaderless proof of stake. I'd attribute proof of stake to any kind of existing blockchain right now that claims that they could scale up. They do maybe 1,000, 3,000 TPS. the ones like Algorand, Cardano, perhaps Tendermint, all of those kind of different blockchains out there. All of these blockchains, if you really look into their protocol really deeply, they all follow like one single methodology on how they achieve safety, achieve consensus really. And the way they do it is they rely on some small portion of the network, which you would call a committee, to basically validate all of the transactions that occur or come from everyone else in the network. Here's the thing though, I always argue about this. If you ever look at any different articles that we've wrote, or even like the sort of videos that I give a little talk in, I basically say there's no way you could really assume that trusting a subset of a network to validate all transactions is safe in any way. Simple reason why. You say you've got a country, you've got a million people, and afterwards you've got a small little government, 1,000 people. Let's give that government complete veto power. They can do whatever they want. And they're the ones responsible for validating every single little interaction, every single monetary transaction whatsoever, every single computer system within this entire country, from all of those million people within the country. Obviously, that kind of politics, if you think about it just a little bit, it just doesn't really make sense, right? Like, why would I trust 1,000 people to basically control every single little aspect of what I have or what I do within society? Let's take that political setting, all of a sudden virtualize it. That's basically what Algorand, Cardano, Tendermint, all of these other sort of proof-of-stake blockchains really are saying. It just fundamentally does not work. And their claims are, well, what if we reshuffle this government, this committee that controls all the validation of all the transactions? What if we do a bunch of different little mechanisms? What if we put some economic incentives on top of it? What if we delegate stake? The point is, economics sound fine and all, but you can't just apply economics to virtual systems, no matter what you do. Ideally, if you don't have these economics to get the kind of guarantees and consensus you want, you really should. Economics complicate things a whole bunch, and there are tons of attack vectors. There's a reason why poker is still a very exploitable game. Just to give a little bit of context, all proof-of-stake protocols have the same sort of safety assumption. They all rely on a committee for consensus. They don't actually let nodes rely on themselves. In Bitcoin and Ethereum, nodes rely on themselves. They get to participate in a random lottery. They do proof of work. It's a random chance, and nodes have full rights to determining whether or not a transaction is valid or invalid. In a committee-based system, nodes do not have those rights anymore. And what we've done for Wavelet is that we've taken this leaderless aspect that I just described about Bitcoin, and we finally made a proof-of-stake protocol that can be leaderless, that lets nodes decide for themselves whether or not transactions are valid or invalid without having to talk to a committee. Having to talk to a committee, you can imagine, that requires more messages being sent back and forth. That increases consensus latency, that increases the time complexity needed to achieve consensus. There's a lot of horrible things involved in both jeopardizing scalability and also safety when it comes towards using the existing proof-of-stake protocols today, which we've then fixed over with Wavelet. So Wavelet, it's really the only proof-of-stake protocol from what I've seen. If you guys got papers or any sort of different little mechanisms that you'd like for me to read or for me to review or want me to give an honest opinion about something, leave it over in a Twitter comment, Telegram, even this live stream. Probably like JJ, our community manager, is going to come and bring it up. But Wavelet's finally something where I'm happy to say, because we've been looking at blockchains for 2 years straight. We've just been desperate for all means solution, not having to like always fall back to some weird layer 2 scaling solution kind of crap on Ethereum.
Calm down. Next question. He gets a bit worked up. There's actually a really good question from Nguyen Kang 1610 on Twitter about the Avalanche consensus mechanism. But why don't we shift over to the next question? We'll come back to that one. Just because I don't want you to get too worked up.
No problem. Okay.
What's
Basically,
next?
Wavelet's awesome.
Okay. Why the name Perlin? Go.
Oh.
60 seconds.
Okay. So, 11 years old, I also had a little moment in time.
11 years old.
Back in my day.
Yeah. That's 2018.
So, I did a bit of game development. I published an Android game. I got a lot of hits. Basically, in this game, it generated this infinite procedural world. So basically, it created all these kind of little structures. It uses an algorithm called Perlinoise, made by this mathematician called Ken Perlin. He's a really big sort of like hero of mine in terms of mathematics because he's one of the only mathematicians that actually use math to create some sort of art. If you look at if you watch the movie Tron, there's all of those buildings, all those landscapes. Those are generated using entirely the Perlinoise algorithm. If you've played Minecraft, the worlds are generated using Perlinoise. So the whole concept is you've got something extremely complicated being noise in mathematics, and you can actually like sort of twist, intertwine it a little bit, modulate it, and actually create artistic structures out of it. So that's kind of like our sort of like theme looking into tech in Perlin. Like, can we take a whole bunch of like untrusted nodes and consensus and make consensus out of them? Can we take a noisy landscape, being the blockchain space, and actually derive really interesting innovations out of it? Yeah.
That's the history of the name.
Yeah.
Next. Although I just remember it and explain it by saying it's Berlin with a P. Moving on.
Bin ein Perliner.
Exactly, to quote JFK. Next. Or did you want to...
all right. So why the name Perlin? That was said by a guy from Twitter, 0M Vincent. So thank you.
Thank you, 0M Vincent. Okay, how do your team differ from others? At Eminem 28116562.
A lot.
So I think there's two very distinct parts of the Perlin team. On the one hand, we've got the dev team, which Kenta can talk about in a second, and then on the BD team, I think we're somewhat older, a bit more experienced in terms of the business development. Like the sales cycles for what we're doing are particularly long. So you might have seen in the news, it was covered by Forbes. There was the first partnership with the International Chamber of Commerce. So the ICC is 100 years old. It's the peak Chamber of Commerce, and it has over 45 million different businesses as members. And so why that was such a strategic partnership was because in the 100 years of operation, before World War II, they actually created a standardized platform called Incoterms. Incoterms are how you know that if a container ship of plantains gets shipped and then something happens to them, who bears responsibility, the buyer or the seller? And so we're building the smart contract, smart Incos. So Incoterms 2020 is released in September. We've already got an event booked with the Singapore Business Federation, which is the government-backed business federation. There's 30 events around the world. So if you're interested or do international trade, I think that a huge area that we're working on with banks and major corporations. Actually, even tonight, we'll be doing our little public ledger launch, one of our products at Westpac, which is a $100 billion Australian company, bank, where we're now going to be co-located. And we'll be hosting many of the major commodity companies. And that's largely because Singapore is a hub. 80% of the big commodity firms are here, and we've partnered with a number of them. So they'll be coming out over the next few months. Get ready. And on top of that, being based here 10 years, we've got the Singapore government as a partner. So just coming back to the question, if you look at our dev team, it's led by Kenta, and I'll let him talk about it. But on the BD side, with myself, Darren, a whole bunch of the more experienced guys. Anup Malani, a professor at the University of Chicago, is one of our advisors, and he's helped us work really closely with the Indian government, where he's doing a big piece of research. The Indian government has signed an MOU with us, and we're looking at a bunch of privacy-preserving stuff. So just that's a quick snapshot. But the most important thing around our team is we have an attitude that it's a marathon. So actually, we did start recruiting more crypto-related people, but we found that the better way to approach it is more as a 10-year startup. So if you look at our token distribution, 4-year lockup. I mean, all of us are here very happy to do that because we're very committed to the project. 1-year cliff, so there's not going to be any dumping by the team. We're really committed. Kenta.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the dev team specifically, we've got like 14 people-ish at the moment. And I'd have to say, like, the devs we've got in our team are absolutely crazy. What exactly I mean by crazy is that we've got a whole bunch of child prodigies. These guys, they've they've worked in distributed systems. One of the guys, Dave, he's got about 9 different open source projects, developed a whole bunch of different compiler backends, contributed to Linux, the distributed systems, cryptography, all of that kind of insane stuff. And we've all, each and every single person in our team, we've all done our own individual open source projects before. So for us, when we look at it from the dev point of view, we're all just kind of coming together. We've got the funding, we've got all of the support necessary, and we're just working on doing a whole bunch of open source projects to really just get the sort of blockchain tech field fixed up. Because if you look at the traditional tech space today, almost everybody hates blockchains, and they have their reasons why. Blockchains promise a lot, and then they all of a sudden get up to the enterprise heads. The enterprise heads start nagging the developers down below the ranks, and nothing really ever works out because realistically, people don't really need a blockchain. For the cases where a blockchain could be useful, a lot of people do not know about it, especially in the traditional tech space, and we're fixing that by really improving the developer ergonomics overall in the space. WebAssembly, all of that, I can explain that a little later, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. So I got another question here that's just come through.
Mm-hmm.
So Christoph Wallner on Twitter. Tonight, it's your night. Where do you see Perlin, also technical, in 2 to 3 years, and what are your focus topics, and how would you explain Perlin to a 5-year-old? So why don't I explain the non-technical side? So in 2 to 3 years, because it actually does take a bunch of time, obviously, to ship a good product, and then to find product market fit, and then to have a proper sales cycle. But we're already, by the end of this year, we'll have a number of pilots in international trade. So if you think about the verticals, we've started with supply chain traceability. If you check out Follow Our Fiber, actually I can pull it up here. Follow Our Fiber is the first live, this is the Forbes article, in case you're wondering. This is the ICC world's largest organization with Perlin. So Follow Our Fiber is basically tracing from the seedling all the way through to the rayon product. So this is Perlin and APR. APR is one of the world's biggest rayon companies, and it just shows the full life cycle that it is certified. And it verifies the traceability from the seedling all the way through to the nursery, to the plantation, harvested weighbridge, wood, dissolving pulp. So if you launch the application, and this is a mobile handset way of looking. So essentially, that's if I was to scan it, the barcode. But otherwise you can just launch a batch. And you can see the shipping port, the viscose mill. So the power of this is, if you think about it in the future, 2 to 3 years, how do you know whether or not this banana or oyster is sustainably sourced and that it hasn't been shipped in temperatures above 30 degrees that would cause it to go off? This is the type of traceability that's going to be created. As I mentioned earlier, one of my passions is the environment, and if you look at the Amazon deforestation that's currently occurring, I think that it's very important that you can know that the produce that you buy is actually not being sourced from deforested Amazonian land. So that's where we're going with a whole bunch of sensors and satellites. And one of the questions here talks about this, we'll get into, but this is an example. So sector 1 is supply chain traceability. And this is huge because of the amount of sustainability pressure coming onto all produce. The second one is the trade finance. So as I was mentioning, Singapore routes about $1.1 trillion a year. It's the world's second biggest hub. It'll soon be the world's biggest hub. 80% of the commodity companies, whether it's iron or aluminium, all of these different oil, gas, it all comes through Singapore. And what we're doing now is looking at the 600 pages. For me to ship I'll stop using the mini banana as charming as it is. If you wanted to ship a container of pens from here to Europe, it's 600 pages of documentation just to know whether or not it's arrived. You need a certificate of origin, you need the bill of lading, the letter of credit, and all of that currently is manual. Estimated 70% of those documents have errors in them. So obviously moving it to smart contract makes a lot of sense. So in 2 to 3 years, I really see trade, supply chain, as being the biggest work that we will do on the business side. And we've engaged with 30 plus partners, which we'll be unveiling over the course of the next 3 months. So very tradable events, HODL, PERL. And then the third area that we really focused on is distributed computing. But it's going to take us about 2 years for the technology, the hardware to catch up, and for us to build out the decentralized marketplace on the ledger. So I'll answer that or talk a bit more about that later.
I mean,
yep, go for it.
The second part of the question was explain like in 5 parts. I mean, I can say it a bit on the tech side. It's quite simple. In 2 to 3 years, like one of the biggest sort of technology trends, it's the whole cloud, it's a serverless function space. Developers really enjoy it because you don't really have to care about infrastructure or anymore. You just write a function, and that function will be automatically scaled up, and then afterwards you can use it for your websites, your apps, anything you really want. Basically, almost instant APIs. Wavelet smart contract interface is exactly like writing serverless functions. You write a bunch of different functions, and all of a sudden each function is an API. 2 to 3 years, we want people to be using Wavelet exactly like how people are using serverless functions right now. The latency is negligible. It's good enough for real workloads. So that's what we highly, if you're a developer out there, we highly encourage you to try it out as well. To explain like on 5 part, I can kind of do it a little bit for Wavelet, the ledger in itself. The WebAssembly versus Solidity kind of fight. Solidity is kind of like, Solidity, if you're, it's like a slow, broken car. You've got this really professional driver, and then afterwards you give him a slow, broken car that's really hard to use and very different from other race cars. He drives it, he breaks down, he quits racing because he gave him that horrible little car. All of a sudden, you got us. We'll give him a brand spangled new, like what is it, McLaren or something? I don't actually look into cars. What's a good car?
Tesla.
I don't fucking know.
Tesla.
Lambo.
Race drivers don't drive.
Silence of the Lambos.
Oh, when Lambo.
When Lambo.
Anyways, you basically do that. You know, he's going to be the happiest man in the world, and that's basically what we're giving our developers. That shiny, brand spangled new car. That's kind of explained like I apply from my part. Yeah. So
next question.
Let's see.
I got a good one.
Huh?
So, how do we, this is from Shivam, how do we make sure that nodes don't fork? How do we prevent mining of critical transactions?
From Shivam. From Twitter or
From
where?
Twitter.
Okay. Well, first thing is that there's no such thing as mining. Specifically, yes, there you can you have like a couple of chances, like say 100 or maybe 10,000 out of a 2 to the power of 64 chance of possible permutations you can make to the critical transaction seed. So it's kind of like mining, but the whole point is that that's significantly less permutations. Because of that, there's a chance that your transaction might not at all be a critical transaction, no matter how hard you try to play around with the payload of your transaction. There's no way its seed will be of the right prefix amount of 0 bits, so that'll actually be critical. So mining is not possible. Because the entire infrastructure is basically shaped as a directed acyclic graph of transactions, there's no way you can really fork either, because, well, one is that the whole point of our protocol is that we merge forks together so that we can solve conflicts and then afterwards linearly order them into a single blockchain, so that you've then got a consistent, totally ordered log or ledger state, really whatever you'd like to call it. So that's pretty much it.
Good one. I actually like this question from JPS. So, how will global financial trade wars affect Perlin? So, actually, that's a really pertinent question. And if you look at, so I'm actually doing a speech for the World Trade Organization, which is the WTO in Geneva in December. And actually, AJ is doing a speech for the ICC Banking Commission, which is 600 banks in China in September. And what's really fascinating is when you look at the trade wars, all focus is really on democratizing trade. So right now, if you look at, say, the Brazilian economy, 99% of the economy is small to medium-sized business, but only 1% of the international trade is small to medium-sized businesses. So what you're finding is trade is getting harder and harder, and it's a big economic growth engine. And with things like, the trade wars, you're just going to get even more complexity, because if you can no longer, for example, trade with Britain because of Brexit via the EU, do you go to the same efforts to go through all of a distant, different customized British import-export customs procedure? So really the whole purpose of, and the Singapore government is putting $300 million into building this, and we're fortunately going to be hopefully working really closely with them, and we're already building some components of it. But they're building the rails to allow for smart contract and blockchain-enabled trade. So instead of having to have, literally 600 pages of documentation from a dozen or more different agencies, freight forwarders, surveyors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you can hopefully have all of that digitally documented on the blockchain, which allows for faster settlement and more convenience. So even if you think about, whether or not you like Libra, whether or not you like, the grams coming out of the Telegram open network, there is a tipping point happening where this type of convenience, this type of enablement. So if I can actually do a trade deal and then settle with Libra or grams or pearls, obviously that's going to enable a tremendous amount of small to medium-sized businesses to start creating value and wealth. And that's really what the decentralized economy has to do. The last point I'll say on the trade wars is, actually, I think if you think about the huge amount of compliance requirements because of banking laws, so Basel IV is coming out next year, and we've been looking at how that affects the capital ratios of banks. But if you just think about the huge amount of compliance for a centralized system, that's why you've got sub 10% banking rates in so many countries. Bangladesh, I believe, is sub 10%. And just think about in India, you've got 500 million users of mobile phones with broadband, but you have a tiny minuscule of them having banking accounts. So I think that's where the decentralized work that we're doing in Perlin is really seeking to open up.
Okay.
Cool. Next question.
Okay. Fun one. So, okay. So why did the team stop using the Avalanche consensus mechanism but change it with the new protocol? By your wife is Vietnamese. You should know how to read his name.
Nguyen Kang 1610.
Nguyen Kang 1610.
Yeah, this was the one I mentioned before. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So why did we stop using Avalanche? Well, it's very simple. There's a lot of things, of course, we want in a perfect ledger. We want smart contracts. We want scalability. We want safety. We want to be sure it's decentralized and all of a sudden our money doesn't disappear one day. Avalanche doesn't provide quite a number of those things I just said. One of the biggest things, Avalanche admits it in their white paper, is that it's very difficult for them to actually support smart contracts. The reason why, and this goes to a fundamental protocol level, is because Avalanche only guarantees what you would call a partial ordering of transactions. What that means is that, say you've got 3 transactions, they happen in a particular order. They all get finalized and accepted into the network. You look at 2 different nodes, those 2 different nodes will see a different particular orderings in which those transactions were actually finalized. You can imagine that, if all of a sudden you supported smart contracts on that kind of network, that would not really work. In CryptoKitties, if you've got kitties spawning and you afterwards could then send the kitty to somebody else, if that ordering was different, then you might try send a kitty that you don't have, and then afterwards all of a sudden you spawn a new kitty. The ordering in which smart contract functions get called, that has to absolutely be preserved throughout the entire network. Avalanche is not able to guarantee that, and hence, a lot of different use cases that you could have for a blockchain, it just does not work for Avalanche. But there's a whole load more problems. The algorithms that they claim on the paper, there's a couple of typos here and there. A lot of the people in the community have pointed out. We've spent about 6 to 8 months working on a full production-ready Avalanche implementation, eventually finding out all of these sort of different protocol flaws that we've then fixed, hot fix, bug patch. We eventually got tired of it, looked into the fundamental reason why Avalanche really works, being the snowball consensus protocol that Avalanche builds on top of. We wiped away Avalanche. Avalanche is basically just a DAG construction on top of Snowball. We made our own DAG construction that supports smart contracts, allows for total ordering of transactions, does not do any sort of weird, strange hacks to achieve proof of stake, to achieve smart contract support. The Avalanche team claims that they're able to support smart contracts, but by bootstrapping another consensus product on top of it, but why do that? Just fix your base layer solution, please. So with all of that being said, that's pretty much the whole reason why we stopped using Avalanche. There's just a lot of haze around it. The team intentionally does not want to publicize the actual research. In the end goal, for Wavelet, all of our research is open, it's public. You can chat with us on the community and we'll tell you all the answers you want. We actually really care about this ledger because, it's not only from the whole sort of open source spirit, we've got the whole business side to worry about. We're working with governments and huge businesses here. We got to really care about this code being maintainable, this protocol being absolutely robust. So
I think that ties into one of the questions from Hutchikins Twink, which asks why prefer WASM than other types of smart contract platforms.
Kind of ties in. The whole reason why WebAssembly is basically Solidity is the sort of thing that was developed in 2014 for Ethereum to represent smart contracts. The thing is that programming languages take a long time to adopt. It takes time for a community to go around a programming language. And here's the thing: Solidity has been highly focused on security. Programmers want ease of use, want compatibility. They just want stability. Solidity changes very frequently. There's not much you can do with it either. You cannot do unit tests. You cannot do all of the standard sort of procedures that you normally do when it comes towards building programs. And because Solidity is kind of the trademark language for all smart contracts out there, that has kind of taken depraved developers away from the potential benefits of blockchains. Traditional devs are scared to build blockchain apps because of the high level amounts of complexity. Beginners cannot easily jump in. Actually, if you want to build a production-ready Solidity smart contract, most probably you need to know another programming language very well. You can't learn Solidity on its own. You can barely do anything with it. WebAssembly, it's this whole sort of safe programming language standard, but rather than it being introduced by a blockchain foundation, being Ethereum, it's being supported by a browser vendor, which obviously has way more support than a blockchain foundation, Mozilla. Mozilla, they started in 2017-ish. Because of Mozilla's stance, they're a browser vendor. They have to care about safety. They have to care about performance. In developing WebAssembly, they really cater to those two things. Actually, one of our devs, on a side note, has worked a lot with WebAssembly, has even done stuff like deploying WebAssembly programs on the kernel, and we also have our own WebAssembly VM. Sorry, that's a little off track. But the whole point being WebAssembly, because it's Mozilla who introduced it, a whole bunch of programming language communities got behind it, and all of a sudden, all of the big top popular languages that the 11.7 million developer community out there use, Java, C, C++, Go, Rust, name all of those kind of big languages, almost all of them right now support compiling down to WebAssembly. That means that you can use all of the tools you love, the methodologies. You can write unit tests, you can write fuzz tests, you can do the most complicated things to build production-ready apps like the usual. You can just write your code expecting it to be a web app, a mobile app, desktop app, whatever. And all you gotta do is just tinker with a few lines of code change, and it's all of a sudden gonna turn into a smart contract. That's the potential that WebAssembly gives, and it's not actually just a potential. You can try it out right now. Legitimately, like we've had a workshop just a couple of weeks ago where we got people to try build their own decentralized chat app. You can think of it basically like a Telegram clone or a WhatsApp clone. We got two lawyers who barely knew anything about coding. They know a bit of HTML and CSS, so designing websites, and they built a full Telegram clone, a full decentralized chat app on Wavelet, just because of the sole fact that because Wavelet supports WebAssembly smart contracts, you could actually just use JavaScript, use whatever you really want to go about, building whatever you want. That's really what Wavelet
I think
wants.
Just to expand on that, so why we're so excited about WASM is, and Kenta hates it when I call it WASM, but why we're so excited about it is because 11.5 to 12 million active developers are engaged in WebAssembly languages, which opens up the developer community tremendously. And actually, I was quite blown away. I did a law degree, and just seeing the fact that in 80 lines of code, you're able to get non-developers building smart contracts I think that that's a huge factor around mainstreaming. And actually, one of the questions that came out was, how important are developers to the ecosystem? What are the benefits and advantages of your platform? Well, I think that would be the biggest one.
We love developers.
We do. But where we see it is, so right now, to bootstrap the network, we've identified three main verticals. So the supply chain side, the international trade part, and the decentralized distributed compute. But then it's up to you guys. We are here to support. We think we've built a pretty damn good layer one with a really accessible platform for developers. I'll let Kenta expand on it in a little bit, but just coming back to those verticals, there's a tremendous amount of work within all of them. Just to give you a quick example, so Dubai Chamber of Commerce, which is backed by the UAE government, they're helping us distribute our products in their 10 offices across Africa and the Middle East. And that's simply because we're a lean team, we're trying to partner with as many people as possible, and we ourselves are not going to go to Africa and the Middle East regularly in order to service those markets. On top of that, and this is obviously building off the superstructure that's created by the ICC, for the distributed computing, we've already partnered with the Indian government and Telkom, PT Telkom. So PT Telkom is the national telco carrier in Indonesia with 180 million handphone users. So the way that we see that is we're helping build these user bases. Now it's up to the developers to help us build things that add value, that are used and are sticky for those users. So I think that the evolution of the decentralized platform moves away from just, oh wow, decentralized distributed blockchain, to what is the user product market fit. And that's where we're hopefully giving you guys the tools to do that. Did you want to add anything to that, or roll on?
You summed it up pretty nicely.
Thank you. To hear that from Kenta means the world to me. So the next question, which I thought was pretty good, ties into will Wavelet support, and this is again from Twitter, applications based on IoT, AI, and big data.
What's the guy's name?
It's JPS again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So JPS.
IoT, big data, what is the other one? AI? Yes. We've actually done experiments of compiling AI over its WebAssembly. We know that there are other people working on it as well, like say the Oasis Labs for one. They're doing awesome work, and we've also been working on that space a little bit. Big data, you really shouldn't be using a blockchain for big data. Maybe access to big data, data control rights, sure. In that case, definitely go for it. And then afterwards, IoT, yes. Wavelet nodes, they have an incredibly low barrier to entry. So as in, you need very minimal amounts of hardware specs, something like 512 megabytes of RAM, a healthy internet connection, which, yes, a lot of IoT devices do not support, but especially with a lot of the more modern ones, a lot of new microcontrollers out there, such as the BeagleBone Black series or the STM32 series, they all have everything necessary to be able to run their own individual wavelet nodes. You got those emitting sensor data, all kinds of different sort of data. You can ledger it in, do all of that. So Wavelet already kind of does support IoT up front.
Yeah. And why that's important for our trade work is if you imagine a smart contract, a self-executing contract, if you have sensors, if you have IoT devices, you're able to then create webhooks or triggers for smart contracts. So, when this particular ship moves past this particular point, then the Incoterms under which the contract has been signed would basically be able to self-execute that delivery was received. So there's a whole bunch of those things that are going to be able to evolve into the future. We also have, I got a really interesting comment from Randy Aranta Lika on Twitter. Oh my gosh, Dorjee Sun and Kenta look like a father and son
Don't go there.
partnership. Yeah. Thanks, Randy. I like to be called a father to Kenta. He just doesn't listen to me very much. So,
making it worse.
I know. A bit weird. Who was our mother?
Our mother. Anyway.
Continue.
Let's just bake in that a little bit. Okay. So next question, Darmenda. How flexible do you think dApps, decentralized applications on Perlin, will be, what are the limitations to building dApps?
That's a pretty good representation of what sort of possibilities. You got real-time interaction. On the more like per click level, you can have transactions being sent out. So you can really get all sorts of nice different kinds of user flexibility.
Put this into simple terms. So versus like, where 12,000, active users or transactions crashed Ethereum, CryptoKitties, what would it take? Like, give us, what would happen if 1,000 people pay PERL Clicker now?
Well, we're going to be spamming pretty soon, so we can kind of see the load on it.
We'll be able to see. But I think that this is a really good example of an application, and Kenta spooled it up in a fortnight. Obviously, the artwork and so forth was outsourced, but yeah, I think that you can see.
UI.
Did you do the UI?
I did the UI.
That's what he does from 1 a.m. till 3 a.m. Okay.
Just drawing in the back.
So the next question is from Crypto Forest. Thank you for your AMAs. We all know that Perlin is the fastest with 31,240 TPS, but can you guarantee that you can achieve this speed on Perlin's mainnet? What are the main features of Perlin that make it valuable as well as its speed? Thank you, Crypto Forest.
Can we guarantee it? Yeah.
Wow.
Very confident about that. Reason why? Benchmarking took 2 weeks. We actually delayed release just for the sake of benchmarking really rigorously. A lot of people don't give out specific stats, but we made very, very sure that the network settings during the benchmark really reflect that of a public network. There's 220 millisecond communication latency. So basically, it's like simulating the speed of sending a message all the way from Singapore down to US, so pretty far you could guess. And also 2% packet loss drop rate, so you've got a sort of hazy connection. There's lag every now and then. That basically is what packet drop loss represents. You combine those two factors together and make that sort of simulated network environment, and that's where we then got the numbers 31,240 transactions per second. If you could have all of those network conditions be negligible, we've went all the way up to 180,000 beforehand. So for the private blockchain network setting where network speeds are perfectly fine, you could trust some of the nodes, you could go all the way up to 180,000 easily. So that's a guarantee from us then in that case.
So on my side, just to chime in from a non-technical perspective, by having a very democratic approach to staking, so part of our role on the BD side is we're building out the ecosystem. So one of the partnerships that you might have seen was we partnered with staked.us. So we're, even before mainnet, they're already trialing us on the testnet. But we're really keen to make staking as a service available for everyone. And as Kenta mentioned, the requirements for staking are super low, and anyone can stake. So it's not just block producers, a dozen people that are going to be sharing all the node rewards. So just think about it: all of the income and all of the ledger fees and all of the, on top of that, dApp fees that we're able to direct from supply chain, international trade, distributed compute, they'll all come to node producers, node people who are actually staking. And those node rewards will be then shared. So coming back, why I think we will have a lot of people securing the network is because of the ease of that. And these are some of the benefits beyond just the speed. There's a few other questions, but I think we're going to move it into the final phase, and we're going to get closer. So I hope your fingers are warm. I've been warming up while you've been talking.
Where have you been warming them up on?
Just here. See, look at this. I'm doing 186 pearls per second. Kenta always brags about how fast he types. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all,
really share my screen. So
no, but you'll use this laptop. So basically,
why would I use your laptop?
Well, we're gonna.
No, you can do side by side. It's fine.
No, but otherwise, he can't see the screen. So okay, we're gonna go side by side.
Yeah, so we'll put your screen up, and then Kenta goes, and then we'll be the judges. Make sure.
Okay. Okay. So guys, if you want to check it out, this is it. And then the second thing we were going to talk about was the Pearline Giveaway. And this is another Gleam campaign. So
same Gleam campaign.
This is the same Gleam campaign.
But if they've entered before and they want to get 10 more entries, they can do so now.
But if you've entered before and you just need to go to this this link, you can get 10 more tickets.
Yes.
And all you need to do is refer 5 friends.
Yes.
5 friends, and we all have 5 friends. And what we're also going to do, so just to be clear, this is, we're about to launch the Pearl Clicker Click-Off, but this Pearl Clicker campaign, so this is just a beta. It's an internal thing. It's only the people who watch. Don't start. Just calm down. Okay, logging in.
Yeah,
this is how easy it is. You simply go there, log in.
Hey, you got 8 pearls.
How did we get? Okay, jeez. Okay.
Log out.
You're so chicken.
Press generate.
Calm down. Okay, and so the main purpose of this is, it's still, we have not launched this public. This is a teaser campaign. It's really skunk works. We threw it together. Have a play. Give us feedback. Jump into our Telegram. Jump into our Twitter, or just get in touch. Jump onto the Discord. But we're really looking for feedback. If you think that this actually does have potential as a real game, we will be launching some quite generous airdrops over the next few days. So just watch our Twitter, watch our Telegram, because we're going to be giving away prizes. We're going to be trying to run like country versus country, like the Olympics of Pearl Clicker. We're even going to be doing an event. So we're speaking at CoinMarketCap. We're speaking at a whole bunch of these different conferences, and we'll be demonstrating some of this stuff just as a use case. And lastly, actually, we will also be on the Ledger Nano. So we're one of the few tokens which, even before we've done our TGE, we've already started securing our ecosystem partnerships. So last thing before we go into the furious click-off is anyone out there who's interested, who represents a project that wants to get involved, we would love to hear from you. Right now it's a bit hectic, but certainly in the next 2 weeks we'll be getting back in touch. And lastly, we have a lot of really interesting partnerships and a lot of really interesting deals coming out over the next few months. So I would strongly recommend that you guys hodl Pearl. Any last words before we go into a furious click-off?
How long are you guys clicking for?
1 minute.
Oh, okay, so I'll put
Just 1 minute.
And it's strategic as well. So, I might be buying a diver, I might be buying a few things just to juice it up.
Okay.
Hang on, wait. Okay. 3,
3,
2, 1.
Go.
Oh wow, this is lagging.
It's not as intense as I thought it'd be. It's just
Is yours lagging?
Oh, wait.
Maybe lots of people are playing it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's much faster on Chrome. Check it out.
Oh wow, Dorjee, you're
Oh
already
fuck, I'm up 45. Sorry about that. Crushing.
Yeah. Probably need to switch back to your other screen.
No, but I think that, okay, let's start again.
Start again?
Okay, I'll work off.
Oh, come on.
45,000. I mean, no. Because the Safari was moving slow, it was laggy.
All
Okay,
right,
we're
so
going to reboot.
Just reset this one, the Chrome, yeah.
All right,
Okay, make a new wallet.
I'm making a new wallet. Relax. This
All right.
guy.
Log in.
Log in.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Multi-finger. Am I going to go cursor? I'm going to go cursor.
I don't know how entertaining this is to watch.
Oh, it's only a minute. What time are we at? What time are we at?
What's your strategy, Dorjee?
I got the cursor, which is meant to give me bonuses, but it actually takes some time to load, and then but then you have to give it away. So how much time do we have?
Yeah, I'm about halfway. You're about halfway.
Really? Yeah, you can actually maybe bring the camera around to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise what you're seeing is facial expressions. I want that plantain. Oh, Kenta's ahead. Whoa. Oh, he's using multiple fingers. Okay, here we
5
go.
seconds.
What? Oh, man.
2.
Damn this arthritis.
All right, fingers down.
My strategy didn't work. Kenta won.
Oh, wow. Kenta demolished.
Come on, King Kong. Here you go.
All right.
I did live in Hong Kong. So.
Yeah. All right, we're done. Any last questions? Otherwise, I think we're good. But thank you so much, everyone. I'm eating the losers mini banana.
This is good. Anyway,
we have
you
2 days.
You didn't have to eat it right now, but
And Kenta wins a Perlin t-shirt, which he's going to wear all the time.
But we will have, actually, we are going to have, we're going to have another mukbang, I think. So please keep your questions and
you guys.
Yeah, and actually, my last point is, so I think that what we're really trying to cultivate within the Perlin network is a community where contributions are able to be recognized, and we're able to have authentic contributions. So if anyone out there, for example, has interests, or maybe a friend or family that works in, say, trade finance or works in supply chain, we're really looking to partner with you guys. We've got some, I guess, from a cultural perspective, we're funded for, after the IEO, as mentioned, for over a decade. So, we understand that this is going to be a long road to adoption, but hopefully you guys will stick it out with us. But on behalf of the team, thank you so much. And anytime you guys are in Singapore, please drop us a note, because we'd love to meet up, and we have regular events and meetups. But for now, that's it.
And we can still see you guys still having a whole bunch of different questions. We should probably cut it off early. We don't want this to go on for too long. But if you guys do have more questions, the whole team's around over on Telegram. So definitely do check out our Telegram, Perlin Network Chat. That's t.me. It's probably not going to work out. But basically, you can find our Telegram over on our Twitter profile.
Perlin.net.